As you can see today, I got to do a little bit of range time in my house. Literally just set myself up so I can go inside, but I figured I want to talk to you guys real quick. I am very blessed on the things that I have. The area I live in, the land I live on. Not that it's some crazy ranch, but it is nice to be able to have kind of quietness. No neighbors will really bother you for the most part. Uh, you know, you can kind of be isolated in what you're doing. You can also enjoy some of that isolation, but sometimes that isolation also comes with a price. A lot of people don't realize that that's really something that you don't even know that's you might have to pay. To live somewhere in the middle of nowhere, you may not have people around depending on where you come from, depending on your life prior to you finding this type of isolation area. But isolation comes in more ways than just physical. For me, isolation is not only physical, where I'm isolated out from people right now, uh, that I could have had people around. I could have been back home where I'm from, things like that. But I chose to kind of find a little bit more peace in myself. At least that's what I thought I was looking for when I did move out to where I did. And I also did it for a couple of the reasons. I had done it for a situation in my life that I believed in. That's including jobs as well. I work a lot, and hustling is very important. Everything you do to become successful is important. But I think that some of us overlook the idea of our isolation chapter in our life. And I do think that I want to be able to utilize this more of chapters. And I think that's a good way to look at it. I had mentioned in a video prior about going through some bad chapters in life, and that started to really make me think about how I address everything that I want to talk about and myself. We get caught up so much in reading the book that we forget everything is divided out. You get to the ending of one and you realize, oh, okay, well, what's the next thing about, right? In our life, we think it's a flow through, and while it may seem like that because it's one life, there is chapters that are built into our life. The isolation chapter is probably I would say, one of the hardest, at least for me, to understand why it came and the behaviors that I was doing and the lessons that I'm learning from it. And I try to be pretty candid. I try to show you guys more into the thinking of things of somebody who is athletic, somebody who's very successful. I don't care, if, like I said many a times, if anybody even really sees this kind of videos, but it's important to me for you guys to understand that different people from different aspects of life and tiers of life, all go through the same thing, and it's all very different in the way that they handle it and the way they think about it, but also it's very similar to the way they handle it and the way they think about it compared to others. For me, the isolation chapter is something that I've realized that over time I've needed. I didn't understand that. I thought that because I had so many people in my life, and that includes women, that includes friends, my whole life. When I was a kid, just was always surrounded by so many people, and I'm very successful and I'm very hard headed and I'm very, I push through everything. I'm stubborn, and I didn't realize that with all of those people, you do have a little bit of false lean on. When you're sad, you're lonely, you know that there's people you should reach out to and people you shouldn't. And sometimes you find yourself reaching out to people and wondering why you feel a little bit worse, why you feel a little bit more isolated. It's because the people who you should be contacting, your friends, your significant others, you don't actually utilize those resources and you don't utilize your internal resources. We can be built to be alone at the same time of being with somebody if it's done the right way. How many times have you seen that we were hunter gatherers and etc., right? Just doing everything all by ourselves. We are able to function like that. But at the same token, everybody yearns and does miss, and everybody needs love. Without two loves, your child isn't always raised the exact same way correctly because you don't have that two basics of love. So the isolation chapter for me comes about because when you stack bad behaviors and you stack things like talking to too many women or you talk to the wrong kind of people all the time, and you start to think that that's a normal behavior and things that you defend by making up things, like you think that you're doing good for other people talking to all these people, when in reality those people really don't rely on you like you think, but you're relying on them more than you think. That's an issue, because there's people in your life who you should be able to at least have an understanding of to rely on. Whether they're there all the time, that's just life, but you should have that opportunity in your own mind to understand that. So when you start to stack bad behaviors of being around people you shouldn't be, doing things you shouldn't do, my whole life I was fairly popular, pretty athletic, successful. I've gone to school numerous times. I've met thousands upon thousands of people and thousands of people I could talk to at any time. And you think that you're doing this like service of kind of having all this in your life when a lot of the time you're not, because you don't actually realize what you're missing in life and what you're doing in your life because you put so many false realities from all these other people onto your mind that you create this idea of a timeline of your life and what you think you're supposed to be doing, how you're living, and what you're doing to kind of push through and continue. When in reality, you start stacking all that, it becomes a lot of weight. It starts to almost weigh you down. And then at the end of the day, you can't actually escape the life that you're doing. And you feel isolated, but you can't escape it because you're doing the wrong decisions all the time and hitting up all these people, or maybe you're drinking all the time, or maybe you're doing drugs all the time, and you just can't get out of it. And you think to yourself, well, if I do it right now, we're talking it's just one time. It's not a big issue. It's one time. It doesn't really matter. Those people don't care. I don't care about myself. I want to be down right now, and that's what I want to be like. And you start to realize that your isolation chapter really is about to be written, because if you look back on your life and you start to think about everything you've done up until that point, look at some people that have been leaving, some things that you've done to push people away. Maybe you've pushed people away who were supposed to be in your life, and you didn't even understand that, and you just kind of squandered it away. A lot of those people and a lot of events in your life are treasures. You can squander your treasures away. You can lose them. You can be on a boat, it fall over and sink to the bottom, and you're not getting it back. And a lot of people don't realize that sometimes some things don't come back as much as you want them to. And it's not because the other person doesn't, and it's not because it's not meant for you. It's because if you think you can control the isolation chapter with skipping steps and not understanding that you're going to learn through that chapter about yourself, and if you don't learn, if you don't sit down and think about what you're learning, you're never going to actually be able to get out of that chapter. You're going to stay in that chapter because you can't get to the next chapter if you don't finish that chapter, okay? That's so important to understand, because you think that, well, okay, I'm alone and I'm isolated for a month or two. Buddy, you might need to be isolated for 10 years. You might need to be on your own for 10 years. Scary to think about. For me, 35. So if I have to be alone for 10 years, I might be alone until I'm 45 years old. It's scary to think about, scary to look at, scary to acknowledge, and scary to, I don't want to say succumb to, but almost, right? There's things that will help you through that process. There's things that you could listen to and look at. The biggest thing is, I don't always talk about it a lot, but I try to touch on it here and there. It's about reading the Bible a little bit. I do think it's important sometimes to sit down and kind of understand it throughout that entire book. It does give you guidelines about these type of chapters in life. And believe me when I tell you that if this is a divine chapter that has come down from the man above, you cannot skip any steps, buddy. If you skip steps, you are going to get run into the ground over and over and over again, and you're going to think you're going insane, when in reality, you're just not doing what is meant to do. I promise you, if you leave one crumb of a prior life of sin and bad choices and stacking bad behaviors, if you leave one crumb, you're never going to get out. You have to let go of it all and let happen what's going to happen. If things come back because they're supposed to, if job opportunities come back because they're supposed to, then that's fine. But understand that your isolation chapter, you can't lean on somebody else if you don't even have a footing underneath yourself. You literally can't. You can't expect to lean if you don't have a footing, man. Because sometimes you need a footing to be able to hold, lean on, and still be okay. You can't expect that. And the idea of skipping steps in the isolation chapter, man, comes down to everything. Everything. I mean, you may watch porn that might give you a self of a feeling, a self a self feeling, of somebody being there for you because it's falsely making you think that. Hell, it might be from messaging one person, man. One person is breaking what you're supposed to learn because you try to defend it in your mind that that's what you're supposed to do when it's not even true. And in life, you start to realize that when you get in this chapter, skipping steps in this chapter is one of the hardest because this one here will ruin or make the rest of your life, right? Where you can think through life and say to yourself, wow, man, if I think back to things that could have been or things that I did, you can think to things that you skipped during that time. Things that you've done that you were like, oh man, if I would have done this, I bet you this would have happened. Of course it would have. But you left it around. You left the breadcrumbs around. Mm, You didn't clean all the way up. Think about it. Think about that. You're leaving all those breadcrumbs around. Everything else comes around to eat them. Everything comes around to get them. You didn't clean up all the way. If you clean up your life all the way and everything that you're supposed to do, the good stuff can start. You can start moving forward because you ain't taking care of what's back behind you, them little crumbs. But you have to do it right now. You can't sit there and say tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Tomorrow may never come. Tomorrow may never come. For you, it truly might just be today. Before you lay your head down, you may take your last breath. When you lay your head down, you might take your last breath. Don't think that your little crumb that you're leaving is going to be a cake at the end of it. It's a crumb. A crumb doesn't become a cake. Your cake leaves crumbs, but your crumb don't become a cake. And I'm telling you, that's so important to understand because you think that if you put all these little crumbs together, you're going to make a cake, okay? And that's not how it works. No matter if they call it crumb cake or not, that's not what it is, okay? You have to understand that you can't skip steps. You got to keep doing what you're doing. Even the hardest isolation times when you feel like you have nobody and you're so lonely and you don't know what else to do with yourself. You don't even want to live anymore sometimes because you're so isolated, you're so lonely. You don't even understand what to do with yourself because how can you live alone for the rest of your natural life? How does it even understand in your mind? It doesn't because it's not how it's going to be. But if you keep living the wrong way and stacking bad behaviors, you ain't never going to get out of that chapter. You're never going to flip the page. You're never going to get to the next part of the book. The book is your life, man. The book is your life. So I sit here and I tell you that people like me, I may feel super appreciative and I'm so happy to have what I have and the lift that the life that I'm living. But I can tell you that my isolation chapter right now is what led me to you guys. Without this isolation chapter, I don't think I ever would have been able to express myself in the way that I should and express my feelings and talk to you guys straight out. And I know it may seem pretty generic sometimes, but honestly, sometimes it's just me expressing my feelings. And I hope that it at least helps one person to understand that there's more to things. And I hope that even one person can understand that what they're going through is exactly the same as maybe what I look like I'm going through. And if I can help guide you through it, that's important to me. I used to want to help everybody and think I was a Superman, and man, I lived that falsehood. I mean, I literally thought I could save the world, man. I really did. Understand that you can't save outside of what you can save, man. You can't save the world. You can do a little bit. You can do what you can in your own world and in your reality, but you can't, man. Don't make a false reality because it just puts you in the same isolation chapter, man. You can't fix everybody if you can't fix yourself first. So get down to the nitty gritty, figure out yourself, understand that just because you're isolated doesn't mean that you're always doing something wrong. That's just the chapter you're in life. Don't beat yourself down over it. I've beat myself down 1,000 times in this chapter, man, thinking, damn. But I know that I look at myself and I catch myself with bad behavior. I catch myself on my phone doing stuff I shouldn't. Do I wish that things could change in life? Absolutely. And I hope that they do. By me talking to you guys and me being accountable to myself, I hope that I hold every one of you accountable as well to just continue to be better because maybe we all get better together and maybe we all achieve everything that we want. And I love being able to speak to every one of you and have this type of platform to do it because it does help me as a person grow And I do thank every single one of y'all for watching. Even if it ain't that many, I do appreciate it. So make sure that you understand that the isolation, you have to go through it. It's part of the process. Stack the right behaviors and continue to be better.